If you're an entrepreneur, you've taken big risks, created many jobs, and devoted yourself to your business. When it comes to building your succession and transition plan, who should be involved? What are the steps along the way? Welcome to Finish Big, the podcast with Mark Dorman, sponsored by Succession Plus, inspired by the book Finish Big, How Great Entrepreneurs Exit Their Companies on Top, by the noted entrepreneurial author Bo Burlingham. In this podcast, we share success stories along with our expertise and knowledge about what will probably be the largest financial transaction of your life. Now, on to the show.
Good day, and welcome to the Finish Big podcast. This is your host, Mark Dorman, and today I'm joined by a good friend of mine from the Northeast Ohio marketplace, Mike Swiatkowski. Let me tell you a little bit about Mike. Mike has over 20 years of experience in the food and beverage industry. Throughout his career, Mike has been successful in building strong internal leadership teams, streamlining operations, and implementing best-in-class quality control systems. Earlier in his career, he assumed a leadership role at a national snack company, Hickory Harvest Foods, and we'll talk about that, where he led strategic initiatives which resulted in consistently generating new business annually. Mike attended Ohio University, where he received a bachelor's degree in both marketing and finance, and he also received his master's degree in accounting from the University of Akron. Mike and his wife, Melissa, are proud parents of four wonderful children, Evelyn, Jonathan, Ryan, and Anna. And in his free time, Mike finds fulfillment in coaching, skiing, biking, and traveling. Mike Swiatkowski, welcome to Finish Big, the podcast.
Thanks, Mark, for having me on today.
Yeah, thank you. So let's get started. Mike, I saw that you went to Ohio University, and then you got your master's in accounting from the University of Akron, home of the Zips. But what I wanted to explore today is a number of things. One, you were involved in a very successful family business, which I want to explore, called Hickory Harvest Foods. So let's start there. Tell me about Hickory Harvest Foods, how it was founded, what your involvement was, and kind of the disengagement story there, if you will.
Absolutely. Again, thanks for having me on, Mark, and just for the audience. It's been great to meet you the last few years. I find Mark is someone with some very high integrity and a very trustworthy person. And as I was going through some of my transitions of business, it was someone I wish I knew a little earlier in life that might have been helpful for me as I through some of my business endeavors. But yeah, absolutely. As Mark said, I spent my career in the food industry. Been running some successful businesses. I was involved in two startup businesses. Done some investing in food companies. Bought one food company in 2006. And so I really enjoy the food industry and experienced a lot of growth and success in the space.
Just to chime in there real quick, Mike, I mean, one of the things that I've found fascinating, that I've learned, a fascinating fact, once you and I have become pretty good friends, is just the number of food manufacturers in the Northeast Ohio market. I would have never, ever thought about it. It's quite an active space in Ohio, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. We are very fortunate in this space to have a lot of companies in manufacturing and brands, and it's a great food culture in Northeast Ohio comparatively to other big cities around. I think we're one of the leading ones with number of companies as well as number of employees that work in the food industry. So absolutely.
So Hickory Harvest, that was a family business. How did that get started?
Yeah. So my grandparents, one of them was an immigrant from Poland, and that was very entrepreneurial throughout his life. In the 60s, he got into owning a few wine and cheese shops. The other side of the family was immigrants from West Virginia through the car industry, which a lot of people came up from Akron. But it's ironic, both sides of the company sold cheese. They bought it from Amish country and Sugar Creek, Ohio, and they sold cheese all throughout the eastern seaboard in the 60s and stuff. So just entrepreneurial from the beginning. In 2007, 1972 was when the company Hickory Harvest was incorporated. At that time, it was more of a distribution company focused on cheese, pizza toppings, got into some distribution to local grocery stores, and was always just finding a niche of ways to make money in the early on before as grocery stores were just getting founded in the area. It kind of hit a break in 2000, the middle of 1980s. A friend up in the Northeast had introduced my father to a nut roasting and trail mix blending, and that's kind of the original origins of the company, and kind of took off, really from there, and developed relationships with a lot of local grocery stores, got into packaging and a lot of other things. But so kind of just finding that spirit and finding opportunities and where there was growth and with local stores, and they had good customers, but also got into the manufacturing aspect in the mid 80s.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I go back to the great state of Ohio, and I hate to continuously plug it, but it is a wonderful place to conduct business and to raise your family. But just within my own circles and our own clients, we've got cheese manufacturers you mentioned down in Coshocton County in South Central Ohio that have been around for 100 years. We've got you and I both know C.J. Dannemiller, which is now a third going on a fourth generation nut roaster. So these are these little companies that, and a lot of them were kind of a similar story, European settlers that kind of brought a skill and a craft from either, whether it's Eastern Europe or Ireland, for example, or Switzerland, and settled in Ohio. So Hickory Harvest was founded by your grandfather, correct?
It was my father and grandfather ran it together in the early stages. Yeah.
Okay. And then, if I recall, the business kind of grew when you got significantly into the snack food industry. Can you give us the timeline there?
Yeah, so that was the mid 80s. So when they kind of got into those, got into some nut roasting, roasting nuts out of a French fryer, 5 pounds at a time. But, just my father-in-law got a contract with Fleming Corp, which is a large grocery distributor in the area. And they outsourced some of their distribution to him to be able to service local grocery stores, everywhere from birdseed, dog food, drink boxes. I remember growing up with a lot of unique products, in the warehouse. But that those relationships allowed him to get into kind of that current mix with the trail mixes and snack mixes and those type areas. In the 90s was when the truck and travel industry really started taking off. My dad really focused on distributing products throughout the United States at that time, UPSing product from the warehouse, directly all throughout the country. So at that time, there was a lot of chains. But over the 20-year period, there's it's been a lot of consolidation of the industry, and there's only a few really players left. But back in the day, he was in just about every account, and as those companies got bought, he remained a key player within the truck and travel industry, as well as the local grocery store accounts that. There used to be many independents back in the day, but nowadays there's really only a few grocery chains. And one noteworthy thing is the Northeast Ohio, from a grocery store chain perspective, has some really good companies that a lot of other markets, might take for granted that there isn't much that exists. But we have Heinen's, Bueller's, Mark's, Acme, all 20 store, 50 store chains, which is very unique in other parts of the country. So
yeah, I mean, where they're dominated by, say, Publix or Kroger or some of the bigger chains, right? I mean, Ohio's got the great Respecs down in southeastern Ohio. But let me just take you back there for a second. So, I mean, you hit on something that just made me smile. When I was a kid, I used to pump gas in Parma, Ohio, and make a few bucks, not much. I mean, literally a few bucks a day. But gas was 49 cents, and all you did was sit in your car and you got gas and drove away. And my goodness, you look at some of these, travel centers and Pilot Flying J, and these things are like little miniature grocery stores. And I could just imagine your family, when that whole business model changed for gas stations, you were probably the folks that were stocking a lot of your nuts and snacks and fruits and stuff like that up on the shelves. Is that kind of how it went?
Yeah, very, very early on stages. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so, at what point did you get involved in the business, and how long did your mom and dad, were they both involved in the business?
Yeah, they were both involved. My grandpa and grandma worked together for many years until they both passed, but they worked in the business until they passed. And my mom, after my grandma passed, came into the business, as well to run more of the bookkeeping side of it. So that was probably more in the late 1990s.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And
Um,
then
and I,
you went to Walsh Jesuit High School. Were you working there through high school? What was the timeline of your involvement?
I worked there through grade school, high school, and college. One thing I remember that always makes me laugh is, I was working there before I was paying taxes at a very early age, and I remember the first time I got my tax bill, I was unhappy because I was making less money, and I went to my dad's office, and I was like, "This isn't right," but I was very young at that time. But so I did a lot, and then through college, I got some internships. And did some other things. But it was a business that my cousins came into. My friends throughout college, they'd come home for the summers and they'd come in and work. So good times back then.
Yeah, good, good. Now, did your dad pass while you were younger, Mike? Is that because I know your mom ended up becoming kind of the chief executive president? What's that story?
Yeah, so I graduated from OU in 2003. I was working for a local lumber company in the accounting department, and it was my dad had always approached me, "Do you want to get in the business?" And I always told him no. I did something I didn't think I wanted to get into, and wanted to kind of create my own path. But in 2004, he unfortunately passed away at a young age of 51. And 2 weeks later, I was in the business. I knew that for the family business to survive, I needed to come in and stabilize the ship and and continue to build on his legacy. So came in at a young age, and you had to put my big boy pants on very early in life, and get a seat and run the company at that time.
Mm-hmm. And what was your role there, and who all was involved in the company? I know it was you and your mom and your brother, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, yeah. We had about 20 or so employees at that time. My role from the beginning until the end. Actually, let me step back. When I first got into the business, at that time, my father didn't have a computer on his desk. There was we didn't have really good costing structures. So when I came in, I had to really say, okay, how do we make money, and how do we need to price our products, and doing time studies in the back. And I really understand sort of a lot of the accounting and the financial aspects of the business, but it was very antiquated of information that we had to work from, at that point. We had no customer pipeline. We had packaging that didn't work correctly, and we only had 4 customers, so very heavily customer concentration. So those are some of the things that had to jump in and do and really focus on, and took a little time the first few years to kind of get the right size of ship, and find reasons that other customers or companies would want to do business with us. And we also had to figure out ways to create new packaging, and we had to move to a new facility because we're very much tight constraint on the facility that we're in. So that's what we really had to focus on the first 2 years. In 2006 was kind of a turning point for a few reasons. One was we bought a company in Canton, Ohio, another nut-based company, and that added $3 million of revenue to the business, as well as operating 2 different facilities at that time. The other big thing that happened in 2006. I grew up with my wife, but in 2006 we kind of, I guess, re-met and kind of started dating at that time, and I realized this is something that's going to be more longer term, and had to really work hard, and realize I needed to make more money, and build the company and build more value. So that's really when kind of had that energy to grow, and started putting in a lot of hard work into the business to make sure that it was going to be successful longer
That's
term.
great. So, I mean, when you started, how large in terms of revenue, if you don't mind sharing with our listening audience, how much revenue was Hickory Harvest doing at that time?
A little under 5 million.
Okay. And did that include the acquisition, or the bolt-on acquisition brought it then up to 8?
That was a pre-acquisition. The bolt-on brought it up to 8, but at the same time, we started losing our truck and travel business. So I think, almost months after we closed, we lost $1 million or $2 million of business in that industry based off of customers not, necessarily trusting. They had great relationships with my dad, but the new generation that took over, there wasn't maybe that same level of trust within us at that time. So that's what lost that business. So it was a little rocky there. But after that, I really put my nose to the grindstone and really focused on adding a lot of new customers and traveling throughout the country to find new opportunities, and ended up being pretty successful at it. But that was kind of a turning point that we needed to get over, or else we could see some major issues within the company.
Hi, this is Mark Dorman. Sorry for the interruption. I know you're listening to the Finish Big podcast, and I'm excited to have you here. If in the event you have any questions, please head over to www.succession.plus/US, where you can find out how to reach me. I'd love to hear from you. And now back to the show. Yeah. I mean, I've experienced that myself, and for many of our listeners, I'm sure you have as well. I mean, when there is a change in leadership at one of your key customers, or any customer, it can really threaten that relationship. They're going to bring in their team. They want to have their own folks, so to speak, almost liken it to a sports team, right? They want to get their players, their coaches, etc. And, for no apparent reason, you're just kind of out the door, which is a shame. But so one of the things that you've shared with me and that I'd like to explore just at a high level is the business was running. You were professionally at enhancing it with some professional management, Mike. But then things got a little kind of went awry between maybe your brother and yourself, and the family dynamics. And we've all seen these, we've all read about them, and alignment and things, these words that are, kind of bandied about. But unfortunately, you had a front row seat for that. And from a coaching perspective, what did you experience there? How did you handle it? Can you just share that with our audience, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So my involvement in the business from the beginning was more on the strategic thinking side. It was able to, over time, as the business grew, to build the management team, started an advisory board. I was in the product development, where we added hundreds of new products, added hundreds of new customers, secured bank loans for some of the growth in new buildings and new machinery, and involved in all the sourcing of the products. Through that time, we grew about 15% per year for over a dozen years.
Wow.
Which led to building a new facility and expansion and outsourcing warehousing and all the stuff that goes along with that. But as you pointed out, Mark, the dynamics of a family business can be challenging. In going back prior generations, in the 70s, there was infighting between the families with businesses, and there was a separation at that time.
This was going back generations.
Yeah. I mean, it's the immigrant families are stubborn families. And
kid, come on, Mike.
It happens, right? So there was some infighting between my dad and his sister. So it went back a while. But dynamics of family business are very challenging, and and some of the things that we looking back, some of the things we really failed on were, we never had group meetings to talk about the business. I would highly suggest, if you're in a family business, to at least sit down once a month with everyone that's involved and have a conversation, have a dinner, and just talk about the business. But that was just something that we didn't have.
Let me just kind of maybe just go a little bit deeper there. I've heard many of my clients say, whenever we're together, all we do is talk about the family business. And then I have clients that have expressed what you just expressed, which is we never talk about business. So you were in the camp of we never talked about it.
Yeah, correct.
Wow. Wow. That had to be very, very difficult. Did you happen to have a board of advisors or anything outside third party independent people that I think sometimes the greatest thing our team does, and maybe perhaps for a lot of times, I mean this in a very sincere way, one of the only things we might do that is different is scheduling a meeting to talk about the business amongst the family members, because if we're not there, they will not talk to each other. And a lot of times it's just kind of like, you're directing traffic. You're asking questions. What do you think? What do you think? Et cetera. That probably would have been quite helpful for you back then, huh?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, open lines of communication where everyone has their voice and their voice is heard, whether it's, necessarily listened to. I mean, at least it's heard,
Yep.
which is something that, unfortunately, my mom, was very reluctant to, and just didn't have interest in that side of the business, even though she showed up and, most every day and was somehow involved. She really wasn't involved, in the business.
Yep.
So that did cause issues. So, I mean, I would say the first 8 years of the business, we got along pretty well. There was always some challenges, but for the most part, we were pretty aligned with growth, but the business really took off. That caused a lot of, I guess, rifts or, in my brother's case, a lot of jealousy from success I was having. And he had a big ego, and a lot of insecurities that he has related to my success kind of caused a lot of issues. So, some of those things, and you mentioned, the advisors. So I tried everything to make it work and make it better, including reading business books, bringing in business coaches, bringing in people that the family would meet with, set up an advisory board to help with decision making, brought in consultants, in quality and production efficiencies and, a few other key areas. And then some people I brought in, the family just refused to meet with. So I was doing everything that I felt I could do to find ways to make it work, but everyone's got to participate, and when everyone doesn't participate, it doesn't work. So
no. It's terribly frustrating and very sad. So the net result was one of you guys left the island, and I think in this case it was you, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, you were voted off the island. So I haven't gotten to know you, and I went through something similar. I've shared with you. I think that's part of our, mutual respect for one another. But you could have the best intentions, but sometimes, the mistakes that I made is that, I didn't have control, and we were 50-50, which is like a Mexican standoff, so to speak. And the business just kind of blew up. And so you were essentially, let's say, for lack of a better word, voted off the island, and you cleaned out your desk and went down and started over again. So that had to feel awful. I'm sure it took you a long time. I know it did for me, Mike, to recover emotionally, because you think, well, gee, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? I tried to do everything right, blah, 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 blah. Where did that leave you? Where was your headspace at that time?
In a very, very dark place for a while. I mean, you get, leaving the business. I mean, a lot of, very much was, lost a lot of the family relationships that I have. Lost my inheritance, lost a lot of confidence that I had, and made a lot of mistakes, when I left that, I wish I wouldn't have done, but looking back on it, you can always look in the mirror. But I was concerned about some things that I probably shouldn't have, and should have just cut ties and left, and just tried not to stay involved at all. But unfortunately, I kind of just decided, let's maybe we can still make this work and still help, even though I wasn't, working for the company, getting paid by the company. I was still involved and helping the family, because I didn't want to see the company fail as soon as I left. But from the beginning, I mean, when my dad had passed away, my mom she didn't trust us, with her looking at her financials, and also had a lot of resentment for growth and change throughout that time. And those are a lot of the ways that it was challenging, but also is why I left and why I decided to kind of find a new path. But without having, I didn't have ownership in the business. I wasn't valued. I wasn't listened to. My brother has his challenges.
Yeah. So I met you. I'll call it Mike Swiatkowski 2.0, post Hickory Harvest, and I think my observation were that you were, still kind of, I would say, healing, but with an attitude of service and looking to help other business owners with your industry knowledge. And you and I have worked on a couple of exit planning engagements, et cetera. But as we look to wrap up here, Mike, one of the things I wanted to share, this new chapter, Gordon River Partners, and you are a partner and VP of Corporate Development. Tell us a little bit about Gordon River Partners. I believe the family that's involved had a very successful business exit from what my research indicated. Where does Gordon River Partners sit today, and what is its mission and goals?
Yeah, absolutely. So Gordon River Partners is an investment family office that actively seeks acquisitions and investments in smaller middle market food and beverage companies and emerging CPG brands. It's a family office fund, looks for high growth, family owned founder businesses. And we've targeted certain verticals where our leadership team and advisory network has a certain experience. We have a strong team of knowledgeable executives who have run and advised many successful businesses with 60 years in the food industry. Besides my experience and knowledge, we have another partner from retired executive of business development from the J.M. Smucker Company. So we have a small team, but a very strong team in M&A and financial expertise, as well as business development, growth, and ownership and building leadership teams. Our mission is to work with local businesses in Northeast Ohio or within this region, and set them up for growth, whether we need to put in new management teams within the business, or if we're just supporting the founders and they're growing the businesses. We're very flexible on how we look at our opportunities and investments, and how we can help companies, either on a minority or majority position, or other structures of co-investing with other groups that have a passion to work with food companies and have certain opportunities. We're very growth focused, and we're ultimately looking to buy, grow, and resell the businesses down the road.
Nice. This has been great, Mike. Thank you for joining me today. Our guest today has been Mike Swiatkowski. He's a partner and vice president of corporate development for Gordon River Partners. He also spent nearly 2 decades in his own family business, Hickory Harvest Foods in Akron, Ohio. Mike, where can people find out more about Gordon River Partners?
Being a family office, we every office is different in how they look at their business.
You do have a website, right?
We do have a website. Yeah, it's GordonRiverPartners.com, and it has our smiling faces of our team on there, and bios and other stuff that we get into besides in the food industry. But that would be the best place to learn more about what we do.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you very much for appearing on Finish Big, the podcast. This is exactly the type of open and honest conversations we're looking to facilitate. What what do we learn as business owners and leaders, and what can we share with others in hopes that maybe they can learn from our journey. So on behalf of our listening audience, Mike, I appreciate your time this morning. And to our listening audience, we're coming up on Thanksgiving. Today is, as this is being recorded, is November 21st. Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone. And here's to finishing big. Take care.
Hope you enjoyed listening to Finish Big, the podcast with Mark Dorman, sponsored by Succession Plus. Don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.succession.plus/US or give us a call at 330-350-5410. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Succession Plus USA. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional tax or legal advice. Always seek the advice of your legal or tax professionals with any questions you may have regarding your specific situation.